Hello and welcome to the Tech Lunch Podcast, where we encourage our listeners to learn something new about tech every week. This can range from learning about new and exciting applications to the advancements in coding and technology. If you are always learning, you will always be a step above the rest. Take the time during lunch or during a break to listen and learn, kind of like a lunch and learn, but for the ears. This podcast will open the listeners' ears to new and exciting technologies they may have not been purviewed to in the past. These topics will range from manufacturing technologies to data collection technologies and everything in between. Hello, I'm Nick.
Hey, I'm John.
Hello, I'm Ed.
And this week we're going to hop back on to our 3D printing carousel here and continue down the road of, the 3D printing and stuff like that. And we're going to look at the, kind of the pitfalls and, say, layback moments of the industrialization and the advancements in 3D printing that are currently, holding the industry at bay. That's one of those things that, as something progresses in size, it has to meet the current demand and let alone has to meet current quality standards based on the industry that it's part of. So, when we're thinking about that, John, what you think about?
Yeah, you gave me a great introduction into that too, because we've talked about quality, we've talked about sustainability, we've talked about managing and controlling what you can control, but a lot of these things that we talk about are big picture, like these little problems here and there, but can hurt your overall view, your overall improvement of your printer. So a couple of the pitfalls, I would like to kind of focus with not only things that we hear that might be, addressing these pitfalls, but also just kind of throwing them out there and spitballing as to why maybe things are going slow or good things, like if they're making improvements on Octoprint when it came out. It's that was a great improvement on managing or trying to control those things. That's just things like that. So I think of big challenges. So what's stopping you? You just got your printer. What's stopping you from innovating? What's stopping you from what's your next step, pretty much? And for me, there's standardization that you need to do. And there's a reason why a lot of people have trouble if they buy, for me, I bought the Chiron, and there's not as much support, so that it's not as standardized. And I'm going to be honest with you, it feels like they're trying to phase it out because it's starting to disappear from some of the stuff. Yeah. So, think standardization. We talk sustainability, so the environmental impact, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Knowledge gap is huge. And one of the main things that I think a lot of people, misunderstand is when it comes to intellectual property in 3D printing is okay. So let's say Disney made Mickey Mouse. If I print a Mickey Mouse, is Disney going to come after me for this mouse because I didn't pay them for it, or I didn't pay them for the model, or do I pay for the model and I can make as many as I want? And then it gets into the commercial, and there's so that you can see kind of the rabbit hole that I'm looking at.
Yeah, you're starting the commercialization versus and a regular hobbyist.
Yeah. So it kind of gets to that point, but I think it also stems a lot from that standardization and that kind of mindset. We can kind of take it to even an OT standpoint, like Ed, Integra, Wave 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, XYZ, whatever you want to call it. It's a standardization, and there's a reason for that standardization. And if you deviate from that standard, you can cause bigger problems, of course. So when we're talking about just even the what's hindering 3D printing and of course the standardization, maybe the cons versus the pros as well. What do you think about it?
So I think if we're talking two arenas. If we're talking the hobbyist arena, it's different from, say, the industrial or commercial arena. Okay. So from a hobbyist point of view, a lot of people started out when VCRs first came out with Beta. Mm-hmm. And right. Beta was a platform that lasted only a little while. Then it went from that to where we went to a VHS platform. But when we went to the VHS platform, we made it a lot simpler. It wasn't as complicated. So now today, when you have a remote, you can do things really simple. So the thing with 3D printers, it has to be the same concept. We have to simplify it to a point from a hobbyist point of view, because that's one market or that's one vantage point. When we're talking commercial or industrial, it's always, can I compete with injection plastic, injection molding? Can I compete with that market? With that, so therein lies the problem. Because I can spit out X amount of parts from injection molding than I can with 3D printing.
Half the time. Yeah.
However, if I want to do prototyping, it makes more sense
For 3D printing.
to do 3D printing.
Yeah.
If I want to create a one-off of something, not this may not be prototyping exactly, but maybe I just need a part to put on something so I can look at this model.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a step up.
And that's exactly what the point is. Like, so you're talking to simplify the standard and then make it applicable to both sides.
Well, I mean, make the machine applicable to the application.
Right.
I don't have to simplify the machine necessarily for an engineer. But if I'm trying to get air fryers into every consumer's house, which I assume that's what we want to do with 3D printing. We want to introduce this to everybody to use this too. You have to make it user friendly. We have to make it like when you're talking about models. It should be as simple as, hey, okay, I want to do a 3D print a mouse.
Yeah.
Then there should be a base model for a mouse. And then you can modify that base model. Then we don't have the issues with Mickey Mouse. That should be a base model for whatever, and you modify it to your liking.
That's when we start dealing with the prosumer versus consumer versus commercial standpoint. There's usually a 3-tier approach. And that's kind of what I think you're getting at with that one.
I mean, it makes sense to me because like having a universal standard for one, let's say, item, like of course we'll just use the same example, a mouse. It will allow for more support. Let's say that, and that's the thing. That's the same thing as like we talk. I'm not only talking about standardize the process, standardize the machine, and those things. It's okay. So yeah, this is the standard for the model. This is the standard for how I print it, and then this is a standard for firmware. Which there's like so many different flavors of firmware, and you can kind of tinker with so much, but there's nothing that really kind of shows you those without you actually implementing them. I mean, you can see a couple pictures here and there, but getting the feel, it's like, driving a car. Like if I'm buying a car, I need to test drive that car.
Yeah.
I need to see how it feels.
So that tells me we need something like Docker for 3D printing.
Yeah, something around there.
You need something like a container that you can put it. I mean, maybe not necessarily has to be Docker, but we need a container or Kubernetes, that we can put this in and then simulate it on any printer. So maybe that's a solution.
Management softwares and stuff like that. Yeah.
And then hey, maybe I want to make personalized things. Maybe I want to take a picture of myself, and then that picture turns into a STL model, and now I can make a bobblehead of myself. Yeah. Maybe I want to do that for family. Those are things that you want to incorporate. Like we have predefined applications built into the microwave. Mm-hmm. I can go hit a button that says reheat. I can go hit a button that says heat for 30 seconds. I can go hit a button for popcorn. Maybe the thing is if you want consumers to become prosumers, then you have to give them the tools to get to that point.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like, you said it perfectly when you started talking about the microwave and stuff like that. It's like everything's the same no matter what manufacturer you get. If you think about it, a 10 mil socket is a 10 mil socket is a 10 mil socket. Yeah. An open-ended 10 mil socket, guess what it is? Still a 10 mil. No, you're not going to change it. Too bad if you've ever worked on a motorcycle or a car or anything like that, you'll never find it. Because the 10 mil socket will run away from you every time you look for the damn thing. Mm-hmm. So, it depends on what bank you're in. But what I see it as, as far as, when it comes down to standardization and stuff like that, you're never really going to have, I don't think, full-blown standardization until you get a organization or a committee that manages all of this stuff, that sits on top of it as a headquarters and says, hey, guess what? I've got a representative from Prusa, from Creality, from all these other manufacturers, from the guys who are on the floor, you know, the regular consumers, your prosumer models, all the way up to your commercial, you know, metal 3D printers. Exactly. Yeah. Get all those guys in the same room and have a conversation. Yeah. You know, and the thing is, and then create little, you know, bits of, you know, pockets of committees. You know, if you have people who are good at firmware, put them on one committee and all of that. And then what they do is you standardize that one firmware is now going to be the industry standard.
Yeah, kind of like MQTT.
Right. And it's also, if you start looking back at it, it's like, you know, Android phones. They're all the same operating system, no matter how you look at them. It can be, you know, it could be a Motorola, it could be a Samsung, it could be, you know, BlackBerry when those used to be around. Yeah. It's going to be the same OS. Well, BlackBerry was BlackBerry OS, but that's still a version of Android. Right. In the grand scheme of things. It's like Linux. You have so many flavors of Linux, but you still only have one kernel.
Yeah, and I think
unless you start talking about the unbreakable kernel, which, you know, from Red Hat, but that's only because they took the original kernel and made it better, and then released that so people can use it. You know, I don't think there's going to be a full-blown standardization until cut and dried. This is standard until there is that.
Open source is the key.
Yeah, but I think the thing is what you're going to find is you have manufacturers who are willing to fight that battle. Yeah. And the reason I say that is because everybody wants to be different. Everybody wants their equipment to do something different than the other guys does.
And they can. Yeah. Because basically the Linux, as Linux, for an example.
Yeah.
They're different, but I can almost, for each platform of Linux, I can almost type in the same commands.
See, that's exactly the point that I was going to make next, is because I love Linux as an example because it's fantastic in how many hundreds, thousands of different flavors.
Like, I think it's 100,000 last time somebody did that are alive or dead.
Yeah, like they may not be in use, but there's that many flavors, and for me, it's like, okay, well, Linux as a whole operates a certain way. I can make a directory. It's the same command, make a directory in multiple Linuxes. It may change in like this specialized Linux here, but like that becomes their standard and it gets named. So like there's like, you know, RepRap, Marlin. I think actually Marlin's the same one that Prusa and Creality use, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. There's a few others there, but for me, I think that there needs to be some type of overarching standard that, like, you can say, hey, these are where these come from, but this is the main 3D printer standard. And then you can get into, okay, well, you've got this printer. All right, well, maybe it's a resin printer. You can't use this firmware. You need to use this firmware here. Yeah. And then it's kind of like a kind of pointer system where it's like, this is the tree of this printer.
Just basic application lifecycle management.
Yeah. So like that's the thing, and I see it on those pictures with Debian or any other these like Fedora and these other things where they kind of stem from, and a lot of their framework is similar to anything that's similar to that kernel, right? Yep. Like so. That's what I would picture it as, and that's kind of what I would like to see. Now, I agree with you; it's going to have to be a big committee because there's not been a meeting of the minds like that in 3D printing. There's no industry like cohesion or as far as what I've seen, they clone each other's work. So to me, that would create resentment. Yeah. So I don't think that they would want to work together.
You know, the thing is, I really think maybe the meeting of the minds, like I was talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. May cause a bigger issue, down the road. It will cause prices to increase, higher than they currently are, which now price people outside of that realm. If you think about it, you got laptops out there that, were originally sold with Ubuntu on board from the factory that are no longer being sold with Ubuntu on the factory because they want people to buy Windows. Or they don't want to do that anymore. You can still order, you can still special order them, but your price is going to go up, but you're going to pay for free software. Yeah. With no support. Congratulations. Yeah. You just found out how to, monetize free shit. But, the thing is, so I kind of see that being an issue. The having the family tree of the firmware would be nice.
Yeah, because it would let you, and then it could
Like a version and control system, I think you say.
tell you maybe differences. Like, hey, maybe use this one. You can have there's better perimeter control, so you're not crossing paths.
Release notes.
Yeah, stuff like that. So I think it's something that you can go on GitHub and you can go through these things. But like, if I am a entry level user that's not using GitHub, that's not coding, but I want to make something for the house or I want to do something, GitHub's not what I want to read. And I mean, because I've tried to give people that I'm helping with 3D printers a GitHub before, and they don't want to look at it. And I'm like, it's pretty straightforward in there, but you got to know how to use it. They don't want it. They wanted something easy to digest.
So,
and
I disagree with the firmware concept. I think it's really inefficient. Why have firmware for something that's not really hardware driven? Because all of the hardware stuff is done at the microcontroller level. Why not just have libraries? Why not just pick a language? This is the language we're going to use for 3D printers. Python, which is a good entry level language for consumers.
Right.
yeah.
And they can take and catapult from that to becoming a prosumer. So for me, I think the issue is everybody still can be independent. Everybody can still have their own flavor, but you make libraries. I just pick the library that I want to use for my application. But I get a base package. I get a base.
That's what I was gonna say, like a clean,
Just
clean.
give
install.
me a base package.
Give it like an APK, or an APT, like in Linux when you just download an APT and you install the package and off you rip. You can even write it on the Linux kernel, really.
Yeah.
And then just have say, hey, cool, I want to install this because I'm using this printer.
Yeah.
Send. It'll pull it down. It'll turn it on. And, let it rip, hit or chip.
Or make the 3D printer self-aware.
Yeah.
Use machine learning so when the printer plugs up and it goes out and does like what we do with topology in a network. It goes out and scans everything on the network and say, oh,
Anything that pings.
you have all these devices here.
Yeah,
I
I know where
notice
I'm
you
at
have
now.
blah, blah, blah. Hey, you have this version of the firmware if we still have to use firmware. If we're just so dead set on using firmware, why not make the system smart enough to know when I connect to the internet that I need this update for this driver? Or hey, ask the question, what are you wanting to do? What do you want to print? What is your material?
You already do it in Linux. You already do it
PLA.
in Windows. You already paying people enough by telling people to update their damn stuff. Anyways,
Make the system self-aware. Turn it into a toaster.
I think we're
you want people to be. You want to make that a hobbyist tool.
Yeah.
Make it a toaster.
yeah.
I mean, it's the truth because a lot of the times your printer is existing in its own environment. It's not really connecting to your network, at least out of the box. Yeah, so you don't really have those. You shouldn't have those issues because it comes with preset, so the manufacturer would handle a lot of that stuff. But if you're anything like me, and I feel like a lot of people are, is I can't let a good thing sit. It works, but I'm gonna mess with it, and I'm gonna make it work better. So
Okay, example, smart TVs.
Yeah.
What is the first thing a smart TV do when you set it up?
Yeah, updates.
It doesn't update.
you
It's
connect to
that
Wi-Fi.
simple. It's that simple. You make this thing an appliance.
I think that's the next step is connecting that Wi-Fi and getting that making it an appliance, and that mindset, making it a smart appliance as well, to where you're like, okay, it's reading back to you, and you're maybe even controlling it with some type of smart assistant as well.
Yeah.
So
And if you're concerned about security, it's you know what to do. Segment your network.
Yeah.
Put that on an area of your network. DMZ for entry point. I have a separate network for here, and this is on a separate segment on that network.
And the other thing is also when you got these things, making sure that if you are going to upgrade that, so that firmware, backing it up, and noticing trends in your equipment.
yeah,
Yep.
I think that's the big ticket item is understanding your trends.
Yep.
yeah, That's a good point. My friend just got the Ender 3S1, and he's. It's funny because his first print was perfect, and I was like, "You're never gonna get this serotonin again, so you're gonna have to keep tinkering to get back to that feeling." But he's looking at it, and he's seeing like little defects here and there, and realizing how minute changes will make drastic differences in your print. So like even something like that, where it's like teaching. It needs to be done.
Yeah, there needs to be a community around it, and I think right now it's a lot of lost.
Yeah.
And that could be because it's coming because you got 13,000 people
Gatekeeping information or this or that.
That or you got 13,000 people on YouTube freaking trying to tell people how to print something.
Yeah.
Which is okay because sooner or later we'll do our 3D printer challenge and we'll go through that process ourselves. However, we're a little different than most people. We actually tell you what the hell we're doing, and we'll go from there. It's how that works. But it's just I think that there's just not, like you said, not enough information sharing going around right now that people are actually in help.
Yeah, because. And I go back to the same example of my friend that just got his printer, is that he actually thanked me afterwards, was like, hey, I feel like I skipped months of messing with this because I just have you to ask the questions from. So I think, of course, we've got you've got Reddit, your Reddit subgroups, you've got Facebook groups that kind of assist, but like having that person who's like, hey, show me your picture. Or show me your print. I'll tell you what's wrong with it, or I'll tell you what to change, and then we'll look at some of the stuff that way. I think that's kind of tailoring it to a standardization would be something that's like, it would make the support easier, and that's kind of what I was kind of pushing towards. Is like, I think support in a large sense is lacking because it's not, of course, it's not monetized, and it's just out of the goodness of your heart.
Yeah, and then it's like, it's like the stuff we've all been talking about lately. It's like, why can't you have a a standardized maintenance platform, where you can track all your stuff and stuff, what you're doing and what you're going through. Who knows? Later on you might see something like that from us. As we figure out other things and get tired of kicking ourselves in the forehead.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
I don't think so either. John can't reach his forehead.
No.
But it is what it is. But eventually we'll get tired of fighting with it. It'll get tired of looking at me like I'm freaking crazy. But we'll see what happens.
Well, I think the one good thing, one of the good things. I'm not gonna say the one. Let's be nice.
Yeah, never do that.
They did make last known good configuration.
Yeah.
That's a good,
If you had this, hey, if that serotonin was reached once, then it was an ideal. It was a, what would we say? It was a golden rule there.
Yeah.
right.
So if those parameters existed, that printer should have been like, hey,
Let's go back.
this was a good, this was a good print. Here was all the parameters for that. So when you start talking about like a maintenance system, it has to start with the intelligence in the machine. It has to start with the machine learning. The machine learning has to be at that root level. It has to be the kernel. The kernel has to incorporate this technology into it.
Yeah.
You have to use some platform, whatever you want to use.
Yeah, start.
Okay, so you gave me a great idea, Ed, with the G code and being able to look at your last known configuration. There should be a way for me to take my G code after I've already sliced it, enter it back in, and see what a configuration is. Now that would, to me, that puts it into the mind of the end user, is like, I am visualizing a good print, print that came out with the least amount of defects, let's say, because I think in a lot of cases you're going to have a little bit here and there. and take that file that I printed and put it into some type of analyzer and reads out maybe what I had, so that I can change my configuration back to that if I made any changes, and then I can slice a new code or a new file with those same configurations. Now it kind of exists on GitHub where you could download. People save their configurations before, but that's we get that's more proactive than reactive. And in some cases, when someone has a failed print, they are reactive in that sense. They're like, oh crap, I made the changes, I already closed the computer, I've already closed this, that, I can't make this print again, and then they're stuck without that.
That's where you want to use vision too, because I think vision, or even if it's a snap. So when I say vision, it's two realms we're talking about with vision. Some people want to follow the whole process and film it.
Right.
But it should be maybe we just take a snapshot at the end. And then you tie that snapshot into your dashboard system or SAS that you're going to use, so that it's easy for you to analyze the data. But you also allow the machine learning to tie into that too.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is, like, if you're getting into machine learning, you can connect all these things, and once you've got your printer on Wi-Fi or connected to some type of database or anything like that, and it's reading back to each other, like, you can put all this stuff on the cloud. Like, why do I need any storage locally on there? I just need to connect the motherboard to Wi-Fi, and then that will get you ever more connected to saving configurations, getting other people's configurations, and importing them or exporting them and stuff like that. So that's just something that, like, just kind of popped into my head from what you were just saying, being able to learn from its prints or go back to a last positive print. That's something in Windows we use all the
last
time.
known condition. It's like, the other thing is, if you start thinking about that, if you're going to go that route, especially with a 3D printer, you need to start worrying about, well, not really worrying about, or figure out how to add a sensor that knows the bed level at the start of the print. Yeah. I understand that now we do have the thing, we do have the auto bed levelers, out there. However, if your printer is not set up as an auto bed leveler, how do I know which direction you're going? And if I was good here, but I shifted left or right, if I don't have I guess you'd say, an accelerometer on board the machine, I don't know how far I've tilted left or right. I don't have an angle finder that tells me, okay, did I set my printer on the wrong level when I built this thing? Or is my bed wobbly from, side to side based on, did I hit a button when I was moving something around, when I was taking the print off?
You're picking it up by the gantry. Don't do that, by the way.
Yeah. It's like, I can tell you how many times I've seen people screw up their prints because they were taking their print off the bed. And it screwed up their level because their finger hit the wheel, and next, the darn thing looks like a spaghetti noodle. It's just one of those things. We've all been there, done that. Got the extra burns from hitting the hot end to prove it. Again, go back to the safety video.
Don't touch it. Just don't touch the hot end, please.
I'll just I'll comment on what you said, Nick. That's where you use LiDAR.
Yep.
Or that's where you use a. So the systems they have now is you can get a base system. Yeah. So a base system means I have some belts and I have a couple of cog systems basically, or pulleys that's going, which can slip. But if I add a worm gear and add some positive stuff, or if I add slides at 3 points, then I physically have 3 places where that bed is going to be stiffer. The other thing I would argue is, I say the XY system, the XY coordinate system is to me is the future.
The Core XY.
Core XY, because why not just take the bed to its bottom plane, verify the bottom plane, and raise the bed as you go up. Yeah. I think that's better to a point. You raise the bed up, and then the bed will follow the head, and then it works with the XY, and I don't have to do anything going in and out. Get rid of the in and out, because I think that's where the instability is.
Yeah, I like Core XY. Yeah, because that's your structure. That's where it's attaching to where it's supposed to be standing up, and if you're moving back and forth, much easier to get layer shifting. Much easier to get those defects. I've got a Batman at home that looks like at its shoulders, he's like 3 centimeters backwards.
Yeah, if it's got a bearing in it and it's got a freaking screw bearing in it, it's it's a mechanical movement at that point.
Yeah.
So they have to be machined to a certain tolerance.
Yeah.
So technically, you really wouldn't have to really worry about leveling too much if you're dealing within a machine tolerance. The fact is that machine tolerance isn't being used or eaten up. As long as it's not being eaten up, you're fine. And if it is getting eaten up, it should be as easy as slipping in a new rod.
Yep.
A thing of all thread.
Yeah.
Or
Lead
screws or stuff like that into the system, matching up the threads and let her rip, tater tip.
Yeah.
It should all stay within a even keel.
Like I said, the lead screws, they are probably for an entry level person. That's probably is a reasonable investment. So when we start getting into slides, it's a little bit different, and you have to look at the quality of the slides. But if you're thinking about going from a consumer to a prosumer, then that's when you make that decision. But the lead screws is reasonable. So you can get the lead screws and do what you need to do with it. However, if you don't have that and you're just a hobbyist, then there are other things you can do. As Nick said, look at the sensors. And then also, each time you do the bed, before you do a print, make sure the bed's level. Put a level on it.
Yeah.
Or build a level, some type of level into your system where it shows you that the level is. Put an angle finder on it before you heat up the bed and verify. If you're a hobbyist, you have to do what you have to do with the tools you have.
Right. And there's pieces and parts out there for people to do it.
Yeah, there's actually what you're mentioning now. I kind of do right now so I have the leveler though. So I got a probe that probes the bed at 16 points already. So it's already telling me which is higher, which is lower, blah blah blah, and it saves that to my motherboard, and it shows me what that looks like on the screen via this side's green, so it's it's good. That side's red, so it's either too low, too high, or something like that. You need to address it. So that it does exist. Now, how often do people use it? Not a lot, because I had to upgrade my firmware to get to that.
Yeah.
So that's not coming standard. I think coming standard, it's a good point that should be something that comes with it already, so that you plug and play. You don't have to worry about those improvements, because that's honestly when the Ender came out with the Ender 3 S1. That machine feels like all of the improvements for the Ender 3, just they did it for you.
Yeah, it's got the auto bed leveler in it, don't it?
Yeah, it's got the auto bed lever and everything like that. I'm also going to be honest with you too. I'm pretty sure the Prusa works so well because it's not Core XY on that Prusa MK3. It's more similar to the Ender with the belt system, but it has 2 lead screws on the bottom instead of the belt. That to me, 10 times better.
Yeah, because it's the tensioning that's the problem with the belt.
Yep.
But what I will say is what does every good carpenter do before he uses his table saw?
You measure twice.
He verifies that table is level.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm saying if you do not have the money and you bought a base system,
Yeah.
take 10 minutes and verify a level yourself. Because I don't have a problem with sensors, but sensors do fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
And the
keep
thing
it locked
is,
too. Yeah. Like,
how much is a level at Harbor Freight?
Yeah.
$1.25.
well, let me do you one better. How much does it cost to make your own first layer print that levels your bed? Well, you're gonna have to do some of the knobs. All I do is go in my slicer and I put up a cube, and I'll size a cube 10 by 10 millimeter, and it's one layer. I go into whatever my layer height is, and I make that height identical to my layer height, so then the printer knows it's only one layer, and then I'll spread that thing around like the corners and the middle, and
Yeah, same.
let it rip. It takes 10 minutes to print that probably. And that's exactly what kind of it handles both sides. It'll verify that your sensors are reading accurately if you don't touch anything, if you don't have to touch anything. And then it'll verify if they're bad, if you have to adjust them like a crazy amount. Yeah, go back to the testing the test prints podcast where we talk about first layer, we talk about temperature towers and things like that, overhang tests. These are all very important, not in the sense that it saves to anything, which I think it should be saved to, but in the sense that you can eyeball now and understand give it an educated guess, let's say, of what your print's going to end up like. And that's the point for some of those prints. And doing that first layer test, that's honestly the first thing I suggest you do. Like after you get a printer, do a first layer test, because that printer didn't come pre-assembled for you and you had to move it, and I can almost guarantee you that someone is grabbing on something they shouldn't. And it just takes, we're talking about tolerances of like thousandths of a millimeter. We're on the micrometer level. Like if you get smaller than that, we're close to the nanometer or getting down there. So if you make little minute changes, you won't notice that, but the printer will.
Yeah.
The printer definitely will. So,
with that, there's so much more that, we can talk about, and so many more topics that we can, hit. A lot of that stuff is covered in, other episodes that we did, but, as we continue down this journey, we're going to start picking off other major topics that we've kind of hit. And with that, we'll bring this one to an end. We want to thank everybody, for listening, around the globe at this point. We never thought it'd get this far. Believe me, I don't think me nor Ed thought this was going to, explode like it did. It's just one of those things. We hope that, hopefully we can help you with your 3D printing adventure, your tech adventure that you're doing. And also, if you have any ideas, for anything, shoot us an email, leave a comment someplace, we'll find it. Check us out on YouTube, put a comment there if you have any ideas. But, I'll turn it over to the guys for the parting shots, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I would like to just follow what Nick said. We do appreciate all of the support. And the ideal is to bring content to people that they can use to better themselves and learn. So I'll let John close us out.
That's the whole point. Every bit of this is trying to put yourself in a better position, or put yourself in a position to assist anyone who can't, or if you're the person who can't, like we're the ones that want to support you and enable you into doing those things. So Nick said, if you got any topics or anything like that, I think if you've got a question, that's fine. Shoot. If you've got a printer yourself, or you listened and already got one, and you're like, hey, I've got an example you guys didn't really quite touch on, so let's talk about this. Shoot, I don't mind spending every day talking about 3D printing. I pretty much do anyways. So,
this is true.
Yeah, just reach out. We're open to anything that you guys have, and no question is a stupid question, because a lot of these things involve safety. So, like, even if it's a stupid question, it keeps you safe. Ask a question. So, thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Tech at Lunch podcast, where we hope you learned something about tech during your break or during your lunchtime. If you did, please give us a follow to prevent missing future episodes. If you have any ideas or something you want to hear or learn about, please send us a show idea to podcast@vulcanara.com. Hope you have a good rest of the day and continue learning.